Hi, my name is Cody. I've been playing World of Warcraft and games like it since I was 10 years old. I've supported Blizzard with my time and my wallet since I owned one, and with my parents' wallet before that. So I'm no newbie to the MMO scene, and honestly, Blizzard has disappointed me more times than I can count. That's my bias, and you deserve to know it up front. So I'm going to follow this case as fair as possible, all the way to the very end. I'll also say this, I'm genuinely impressed by what Project Ascension has built, especially what they just released on July 3rd, Conquest of Azeroth. 21 custom design classes, a new support role, years of design work, opened up free to everyone. Does any of that matter legally? Well, that's a different question entirely, and we're going to treat it like one. Blizzard gets to allege. Blizzard still has to prove. So, let's get into it. Here's the deal. Blizzard's strongest case against Project Ascension is the modified client story. Sure. Blizzard says Ascension distributed a modified World of Warcraft client, hooked it up to unauthorized private servers, used Blizzard's code, art, assets, branding, bypassed access controls, and monetized it all through something called donation points. If Blizzard proves that story with real evidence and ties it to specific defendants, Ascension is in dangerous legal territory. So today, we're giving Blizzard's best version a fair hearing, and then we're asking for the proof. Show the client, show the files, show the money, show the defendants, show the injury, because being fair to their case isn't conceding it. It's how you find the real fight. A quick update first, Blizzard's early discovery request is now contested. A lawyer has appeared for Online Success Partner, a company that says it was incorrectly sued under the name Online Management Partners. That company told the court it plans to oppose Blizzard's request for early subpoenas and asked for time to respond by July 10th. So, Blizzard wants subpoenas early. Online Success Partner is saying, oh, hold on, let's respond first. There's no signed order, there's no ruling on the merits, and none of this proves or really disproves anything in the complaint. All it means is someone is pushing back, which honestly makes this video a bit sharper. Before the court decides discovery, and before the internet treats a complaint like evidence, let's separate Blizzard's strongest story from what it still has to prove. So, walking into Blizzard's strongest allegations is indeed uncomfortable, but it's necessary. A weak defense pretends the hard facts are harmless. A serious defense names them, separates allegations from proof, and makes the plaintiff carry the burden. So listen for a rhythm. Blizzard alleges, if proven, that matters. The defense still asks, one more tool before we start. A lot of the complaint's key allegations begin with the words, Blizzard is informed and believes. That's standard legal language and it's allowed, but it usually marks the stuff Blizzard believes is true and doesn't claim to know firsthand yet. The roles, the money flow, the hosting, the corporate structure, keep that phrase in your ear. It's basically a map of where Blizzard still needs discovery. So, all right. Blizzard's hardest hitting allegation is the modified client. And hardest doesn't mean proven. Blizzard alleges Ascension offered an unauthorized, modified version of the WoW client, and that players downloaded it, installed it, and used it to connect to Ascension's servers. Blizzard says that client includes or is built from Blizzard-owned software and game content, code, art, maps, characters, music, textures. If Blizzard proves a full or near full modified WoW client was distributed, that's the center of gravity for the whole copyright case. And this is where the defense has to be honest. A private server is, legal theory is one thing. A proven distributed client full of protected Blizzard code and assets, that's a much harder fact. But stating the allegation isn't conceding it. The defense asks, What exact client version? What files? What hashes? What changed? Who touched it? Who controlled it? Who knew what? A screenshot in a complaint can be persuasive, but it's not source records, binaries, download logs, or expert testimony. And to be fair to the complaint, it does assign roles. Sure, it names individuals and says who allegedly coded, who built content, who ran support, who ran the business. But nearly every one of those role paragraphs starts with informed and believes. Naming a role is not proving a role. Hey y'all, by trade, I'm a software developer, and right now I'm building lead engines for home service businesses like roofing companies, water filtration installers, HVAC, plumbers, you name it. So if you run a business like that and your lead pool maybe has gone stale or you are overpaying for leads, let me help you out. There's a link down below where you can book a free call with me. We'll just talk about what you actually need. Maybe that's a lead engine built for your business. Maybe you want to see how I use Codex and Claude in my day-to-day developer workflow, or maybe you want to learn to build software yourself. And honestly, there's no better time than right now to have those kind of aspirations. Whatever it is, click the link down below, book a date, let's connect at your earliest convenience. All right, now back to the show. So next up, the website and launcher. The theory is simple. The website allegedly moved people from Play Now to a download page to a launcher to an Ascension client to unauthorized servers. If that's proven, it helps Blizzard argue this was a distribution system. That's a real litigation point. But the defense response is just as concrete. Prove what the launcher actually delivered. Prove what files got downloaded and whether they contain Blizzard-owned content. Prove how updates worked and prove which defendant controlled the launcher, the storage, the accounts, the release process. A launcher by itself isn't the whole case. The legal question is what it delivered and who controlled the pipeline. So, Blizzard also alleges Ascension ran a network of unauthorized private servers, and the complaint frames everything as one combined system: modified client, private servers, accounts, updates, support, monetization. If Blizzard proves the servers made those allegedly copied files useful outside Blizzard's world, that strengthens their story. But a defense should pull apart the pieces Blizzard wants to bundle. Server-side functionality is a different issue from, well, copied client files, if you will. Gameplay rules are a different issue from protected assets, and new classes, progression systems, and community design work should be analyzed separately from the alleged use of Blizzard-owned files. Blizzard wants you to see one giant, big, bad act. A defense breaks it into parts and makes Blizzard prove every single one. One of the most dangerous parts of this lawsuit, the DMCA, that Blizzard alleges the official WoW client contains technological measures that control access to its game, and that the Ascension client circumvented those access controls so players could connect outside Blizzard's ecosystem. If that's backed by real technical evidence and tied to specific defendants, the DMCA claim could be one of Blizzard's strongest points. But saying that out loud isn't an admission by any means. It's just naming the terrain. We are keeping this legal and non-technical, so no access control walkthroughs, no bypass tutorials, and to be fair, the complaint does describe the alleged measures at a general level. Server checks, license checks, encrypted traffic, but describing a measure in a pleading is step one. The actual case is proving a qualifying measure. Proving circumvention and tying that conduct to a specific defendant with expert evidence, what measure, what work, what conduct, which defendant, what intent, what statutory fit. The defense can't pretend the DMCA doesn't exist. It fights by making Blizzard prove the elements with evidence a court can actually use. Blizzard's complaint is full of screenshots, and that matters. Screenshots are extremely powerful, and they help a judge or anyone scrolling by understand Blizzard's theory in seconds. Website imagery, launcher imagery, gameplay, branding, comparisons. Honestly, it's one of Blizzard's cleanest strengths. The theory is visually easy to explain, but visual strength is not complete proof. A defense sorts the evidence into categories: code, textures, music, maps, logos, screenshots, and original additions, because each category raises different legal questions. A gameplay screenshot might support a public display theory. A logo comparison might support trademark. A client binary might support copyright or the DMCA, and server-side custom systems could actually matter for the defense. If they show original design layered on an old world MMO, then yes. Don't let every picture become proof of every claim, though. Screenshots are advocacy. They still have to be connected to protected works, copying, damages, and ultimately the defendants. Okay, now we have to talk about money. Blizzard alleges Ascension used donation points and other monetization, and that money flowed through corporate entities for the benefit of certain individuals. And look, that's a rough allegation and a rough optic for Ascension. Money changes the story. Blizzard will argue this was commercial exploitation, and they'll use it to push willfulness profits, damages, and secondary liability. It's their best argument, to be honest, but the defense response isn't to pretend money doesn't matter, it's to ask the next questions. How much gross revenue? How much actual profit? Who personally received the money? Who controlled the accounts? Were donation points optional, cosmetic, or did they affect gameplay? How many paying users were also Blizzard subscribers? How many would never have paid Blizzard either way? And what damage actually flowed to Blizzard? This is where every Ascension player equals a lost Blizzard customer. Needs actual evidence. And watch where the big numbers come from. For claims like over 1 million players, the complaint cites Ascension's own marketing and at one point a fan wiki. A hype number on a website is not an audited user count, and it's definitely not a revenue ledger. Donation points are a tough optic, but they're not a blank check for damages either. Blizzard also brings a trademark claim, and the strongest visual here is the logo comparison. Blizzard puts its World of Warcraft branding next to Ascension's and argues the similarity is likely to confuse people about affiliation, sponsorship, or even approval. That's a serious allegation. So trademark is all about confusion. So the defense asks, did players actually think Ascension was official Blizzard content? Did anyone believe Blizzard sponsored it? Were there disclaimers? How savvy was the audience? How did Ascension describe itself? Logo mimicry is riskier than plain text reference. That distinction matters. And there's one more thing to watch. Trademark law being used as a shortcut for copyright. You used our game content is copyright. You confused customers about who made this is trademark. So the defense answer is to ask what confusion actually happened and whether trademark is doing copyright's job. Blizzard isn't just suing over what Ascension allegedly did, it's also trying to make Ascension responsible for what players allegedly did. That's secondary liability, inducement, contributory infringement, vicarious infringement. Now, Blizzard alleges players infringe when they download and use the Ascension client, and that the defendants encouraged, enabled, supported, or profited from that. If Blizzard proves user infringement, plus knowledge, contribution, control, and financial benefit, those claims matter. But the defense asks, which users, which downloads, which instructions, who wrote them, who controlled access, who directly benefited? Because support is a broad word. It can mean technical support for infringement. It can also mean community management, account help, and ordinary bug reports. Blizzard has to connect the support to the legal theory, person by person. There's one more claim that doesn't get much attention, so interference with contract. Blizzard says its players agree to a license agreement, the EULA, which forbids playing on emulated servers, and it alleges the defendants induced players to break that agreement. If proven, that's another pressure point. But contract claims are specific. Which users had the contracts? Did those exact users play Ascension? What shows any defendant knew about those contracts themselves? And what harm came from the breach itself? The complaint says many, if not all, Ascension players were once WoW players. Many, if not all, is an estimate. It's not a user list. This is the warning allegation. And this is the last piece of Blizzard's best case. Being fair means not skipping it. Blizzard alleges it warned them. The complaint says Blizzard contacted certain defendants by email, phone, and hand delivery, told them the project was unlawful, and says they ignored it and kept going. If that's proven, it matters. It moves the story from they should have known to they were told. That's how you build a willfulness case. And willfulness is how damages get pretty big. Blizzard also alleges the project's servers are hosted by a Russia-based provider that the US Treasury sanctioned in 2025. And it wants the court to read that hosting choice as a signal of intent. That's one of the most aggressive framing moves in the whole complaint. The defense response: what was actually sent, to whom, and when was it received? Who chose the hosting, and what did they know? And remember, the hosting allegation is pleaded on information and belief. A demand letter is an allegation of notice, not a finding. And an inference about intent is an argument, not proof of what was in anyone's head. Anyways, why this really matters, and why spend a whole video on Blizzard's best case anyway? Because this is the merits map. The dangerous facts are clear. The modified client, the DMCA, the donation points, the warning allegation. Now Blizzard has to prove the actual case, the files, the code, the launcher, the servers, the money, the user conduct, the confusion, the defendants, the injury. Blizzard owns substantial rights in the World of Warcraft space. Obviously, that's the beginning of the story. It still has to prove the rest. So, that's Blizzard's best case, stated as fairly as I know how, and notice what fairness got us. It didn't weaken the defense, it sharpened it. Now we know exactly where the proof has to land in court. Liability attaches to evidence, to conduct, and to an actual person or entity, not to vibes, not to screenshots alone, and definitely not to the word defendants. One final thing: do not dox, threaten, brigade, contact, or try to identify private individuals. We are here to analyze a lawsuit, not to turn a community into a mob. Blizzard gets to allege. Blizzard still has to prove. Thank you for watching.